So you may have been seeing a lot of FUD about the Flare network in recent weeks. In this video, I'm actually going to talk about this and we're going to discuss in a little bit more detail to try and pinpoint exactly what people's concerns are. So before we jump in, I want to give you guys a little bit of context about what this is all about. So there's three things which actually happened in recent events since the TDE, the token distribution event. The first is that signal providers received a grant and that was paid in FLR. The second thing is that BitTrue Exchange actually opened deposits of the Flare token before the token distribution event concluded, and this was against their agreement with the Flare team. The third thing is that some signal providers sold their FLR as an IOU on the BitTrue exchange. So now that we have that out of the way, let's start with the grant. So Hugo says that the signal providers on Flare received a grant, and this was paid in FLR for their work for providing data to the network for the months leading up to the TDE. Now, this was actually useful because it allowed the network to have activity to run tests on certain aspects, and one of these can be seen as the FTSO. And for those of you who may be new to the Flare network, it actually launched quite some time ago. If we go up to here into the top right on the Flare Explorer and type 1, it's going to give us the details about the very first block. And this occurred 6 months ago, so the network has been live for half a year. During that time, the infrastructure has been built out and signal providers have actually been submitting prices over the course of the past couple of months to help analyze the FTSO and make sure that it is running smoothly. If we scroll down here, we can see that providing this data in a reliable way requires the operation of a node, and of course the FTSO algorithm. This is basically used to gather prices from various exchanges and submit them to the FTSO. Now, this is not an inconsiderable expense. As there was no network-based compensation for this work, the FTSOs or the signal providers were given a grant to cover their costs. That's basically because no one was delegating to the signal providers because no one had FLR before the token distribution event. And as a result, the signal providers were submitting prices, accruing costs with their infrastructure, but not really being compensated for their work. So the FLR grant was sent out to the signal providers the day before the token distribution event. Principally, this timing occurred because we would be immensely busy around the TDE, and sending transactions to 80 signal providers is a time-consuming process from our side. We did not want this grant to come days or weeks after the TDE. So basically, the signal providers received a grant in the form of FLR. We have Jungle here on Twitter saying that the mistakes that Flare made netted insiders a lot of money. And the way that's spun to me, it sort of sounds a little bit malicious. Insiders, right? The insiders that Jungle is referring to are signal providers for the Flare network. They've been given a grant for months of work for supporting the FTSO prior to the token distribution event. Jungle replies here, yeah, that is exactly what an insider is. They had access to information that the general public did not. Now, I was very curious to know which information he is speaking of. It's very common knowledge that the Flare team have a grants program, and it's used to accelerate the development on the network, and they publicly promote it very often. In fact, we can actually go to their website, where we can see a little bit more information about this grants program. The Flare Ecosystem Support Program provides both financial and non-financial support to projects and entities within the Flare network community in order to accelerate the growth of the ecosystem. So I actually personally think that this grants program is a good thing. It encourages development on the network, and that's what we really need. And this goes to builders that are building decentralized applications, but also signal providers who are producing price data feeds for a critical component, being the FTSO. So moving on now to the Bitrue aspect of this, shortly before the token distribution event, Bitrue opened deposits for FLR and switched their IOU market to enable the trading of freshly deposited FLR, thereby creating a market for real, non-IOU FLR. And this is where I believe the problem is. This allowed some FTSOs or signal providers to sell some of their grant FLR into this market ahead of the community receiving FLR via the token distribution event. And one thing I would like to clarify here is that the token distribution event of the initial 15% is nothing to do with the grants program. Now, the Bitrue IOU market lacked liquidity and was something that Hugo has personally been warning against for quite some time. The result of the signal providers selling clearly drove down the market substantially. Now, what is interesting is that the IOUs were trading on Bitrue long before the signal providers received this grant. Although the signal providers will have contributed towards this price decrease, you can certainly expect that other participants that already had the IOU on Bitrue also exacerbated this decline in price. Now, Hugo was clearly disappointed with Bitrue and rectified the problem as soon as possible, and Bitrue as a result closed their deposits. Now, just having a quick look through Hugo's timeline here, we can see that some signal providers have not actually sold any FLR, and all of this can be seen on the blockchain, but some have, so it's not like all of the signal providers participated in selling 100% of their grant. That's definitely not the case. It's a subset of these signal providers, and I think that's important to highlight because you can't paint everyone with a broad brush. Now, is this the Flare team's fault? I don't think so. I think it's a question of ethics. Are people mad because they sold high, or are they mad that Bitrue gave them the opportunity to sell before everyone else? And I think that's where the crux of the matter is. Here's my 2 cents. I think the idea of signal providers which provide critical infrastructure to the Songbird and Flare network not being able to sell Songbird or Flare makes as much sense as proof-of-work miners not being able to sell to cover electricity costs, or proof-of-stake validators not selling their rewards. So right here I'm trying to differentiate them, and this may be quite specific, but I really like to specify the problems, and it seems like this highlights that not many people have a problem with this. The problem lies within the signal providers receiving FLR early and then being able to sell it on Bitrue Exchange. Now, I really want to jump into this thread, which is probably the meaty part of this video, because this is where I really try to drill down into what people's concerns actually are. This is Oz Crypto, and he's sort of stating here that he is buying FLR and he's actually planning to hold it.
Now, for me personally, I actually bought additional Flare and I will hold on to it.
He's a proponent of this recent FUD, and he brings out recent videos with the titles such as, "Is Flare the next FTX?" Obviously not. One's a decentralized network and the other one is a exchange which had a mismanagement of user funds. Is Flare a Ponzi scheme? Did I just uncover a crypto scam? Very attractive and enticing videos. I'm not sure what his motives are, but we actually go down here to the thread, which I really want to discuss in a little bit more detail. Jim is asking, is this the best I can do? And he's talking about Oz's concerns. And, I really want to get to the bottom of people's concerns. And this is what this thread is all about. Jungle says, it is embarrassing. I wasn't really sure if he was referring to these video titles, but evidently not. I asked him what is embarrassing, and he said that I ignore valid concerns and just want to be a cheerleader. You're one of the most knowledgeable people in this space and a Flare community leader. Thank you very much. He asks me to step up. Well, I'm really trying to get to the bottom of it, right? So we have Moon here saying, well, as many months ago regarding the mishandling of a simple airdrop, If they can't get a simple airdrop right, what else will they mishandle? Now, the TDE was actually a great success. It went without a hitch, and all FLR that was due to be distributed to eligible wallets was actually done so within the space of a couple of hours. And I'm not sure where he's getting his information from. Jungle replies with a completely irrelevant tweet. He's linking a Hugo tweet and it says, "It is best unethical for the FTSOs to have taken advantage of the market to sell FLR prior to the community receiving their tokens." I agree with that. I have suggested to the FTSO community that all FTSOs that deposited to Bitrue receive a first strike. There is general agreement to this, and that's fine, but it's completely irrelevant. So I say that it is not relevant as grants were not part of the token distribution event, the initial 15%, right? Grants and the TDE are two completely separate events, and that's what I was commenting here, saying that the TDE was a great success, and it honestly was. The FLR given to signal providers was due long before the TDE and was to reimburse them for months of submitting prices on the Flare network to bootstrap the FTSO without any reward, and that's actually mentioned in this thread here that he linked above. So Jungle replies, "You think it's ethical to sneak live coins into a derivative market and sell them under the radar? Reimbursements shouldn't come via front running." So I'm not really sure what he's trying to insinuate there, but I'm really trying to get to the nitty-gritty. What is it that he's concerned about? So I ask Jungle if his issue is with the ethical choices of some of the signal providers, or maybe it's with Bitrue. I really want him to specify what it is that he's concerned with. Apparently, it's everyone involved. Assets shouldn't have been released before the launch, signal providers shouldn't have sold them, and Bitrue shouldn't have facilitated the trading. It's a trifecta of front-running and unethical or reckless behavior. Front-running is a very strong word, and I'm sort of intrigued to see why he used these particular words, but anyway, so I wanted to get this to the nitty-gritty and pinpoint what it is that he's concerned about. When I read this tweet from Jungle, I sort of boiled it down to 3 different reasons why he's concerned about the Flare network. He's concerned that Flare bootstrapped the FTSO by giving signal providers a grant, that some of the signal providers sold FLR IOUs, and that Bitrue opened deposits for FLR prior to the token distribution event concluding. I thought that was pretty obvious, I just wanted confirmation, but no, Jungle believes that I'm trying to twist things. He thinks it's great an investment was made in the network infrastructure, so that essentially rules out this concern here, which is obviously warranted. There's nothing wrong with giving people a grant to build the infrastructure. What he doesn't think is great is that Flare and Bitrue assisted the signal providers to front-run the market. Is that hard to understand? Well, it is, because I want to get a little bit more specific, believe it or not. So as I said, I'm just trying to identify what the actual concerns are. I'm wondering if he is suggesting that there was some sort of collaborative effort between all 3 parties. That's Flare, that's Bitrue, and that's the signal providers. Now, to put this into perspective, the Flare network are only in control of giving grants to those supporting the FTSO. There's nothing wrong with that, right? The Flare network, they don't own Bitrue. Bitrue is a completely separate entity. They're in control of when they open deposits, and unfortunately, they went against the agreement with the Flare team and decided to open deposits early. Obviously, the signal providers are all individuals. They create their own algorithms and submit prices to the FTSO. Hence, the Flare network do not have any control over them either. So we scroll down here and I tell him that half of the battle is trying to understand people's concerns. I want to understand yours, Jungle, and I honestly feel after digging a little bit deeper, everyone seems to go quiet. I can't alleviate people's concerns if I'm not sure what they're concerned about. And this is referring to a tweet that he mentioned higher up in the thread, saying that I ignore valid concerns. Now, this is it, this is my problem. After many hours discussing this and going through this thread, I try to pinpoint the concerns, right? And after backing someone into a corner where their arguments don't really have any validity, they unfortunately go very quiet, and I can't seem to extract any more information to try and get to the root cause. As you can see, I've spent most of this thread trying to pinpoint what it is you're actually concerned about. You know, from what I can gather from the last message, it seems like his concern is that he believes the Flare team, Bitrue, and signal providers may have conspired to sell FLR as an IOU before the token distribution event. I asked him if I'm close, but obviously there was no response, and I've been waiting for him to respond, but it doesn't seem like it's actually going to occur. It seems like he's been ignoring this tweet ever since, despite referencing it in some of the comments that he's chosen to reply to. I really think that it comes to conflating a number of different participants. You've got the Flare network team who have given signal providers a grant. There's nothing wrong with that, and Jungle certainly agreed. You've got signal providers who received the FLR grant. Some of them actually sold this FLR before the TDE actually concluded. Finally, you have the third participant, and that is Bitrue, who opened up FLR deposits earlier than agreed. Now, here's the thing. My issue is with Bitrue, because there's no problem with Flare giving people a grant. The signal providers, you know, it's immoral at best if they chose to sell when they did. But it's Bitrue who enabled this. Without Bitrue facilitating the trading of FLR and allowing deposits, none of this would have happened. As a result, I feel like it's Bitrue's fault if anyone was to blame. So that's my perspective on it, and I would love to hear yours too. But before we wrap up here, I want to give you some bonus content on some other FUD that has recently been proliferating the community. We're starting here with another Oz Crypto special, and he says, for all those supporting FLR and Flare based on the belief that F assets and Layer Cake are in development, despite the complete lack of any GitHub that shows they are, here's Hugo's stance, and he gives a quote here. There is also no guarantee that decentralized applications developed by this team would be successful. Interesting quote to pick right there. If we look down further here, and if you choose to actually read this, you will see that Hugo did actually make a quote that Oz obviously forgot to mention, and it's probably the most relevant relating to the topic. And that quote from Hugo is that the team is working on an implementation of the F asset protocol and separately an implementation of the ideas behind Layer Cake. And you can see that in the actual message he linked. So as I said in this tweet, you may be shocked to hear that F assets and Layer Cake are currently being built despite Oz Crypto's suggestive tweet. What's more embarrassing is the fact that the information regarding this is actually contained in the screenshot that he's sharing. Now, Oz has only been in the space for a couple of minutes. He's still got a lot to learn as far as I'm concerned, and for those that may have seen his recent streams, he does lack a lot of understanding about some of the basic things on the Flare network. Now, something else to consider is that it literally says F assets are currently in development by an ecosystem provider on the Flare network website. You can't get much more obvious than that. For me, in development by an ecosystem partner suggests that it is in development. Now, a lot of people have been asking, what does it mean, this ecosystem partner? Well, if we go back to the screenshot, we can see that part of the team behind Flare, but not all of them, are separately employed by a for-profit corporation that intends to develop decentralized applications on Flare and possibly other networks. This team is working on an implementation for the F asset protocol, and separately an implementation of the ideas behind Layer Cake as outlined in the papers. So there is a subset of the Flare team. For me personally, it doesn't really matter who develops the F asset system. What matters is it's developed, right? I don't care who puts their name on it, and it's a subset of the Flare team. So I just wanted to dismiss that FUD right there. So Oz rebuttals here with some quotes, and he also repeats that there is zero code in existence. And I think Oz is actually a developer, so I thought that he would understand this. If you think a project developing an application for profit would open source their code from the get-go, you are sadly mistaken. Open sourcing means basically allowing the world to view and contribute to your code base, and to do this while something is in development that you're trying to develop and use as a profitable business is absolutely ludicrous. But anyway, that's just my opinion. You're obviously free to make your own. And again, I just want you to have a quick peek at this video. The same person that is releasing videos with titles such as, "Is Fleur the next FTX? Is Fleur a Ponzi scheme? Or did I just uncover a crypto scam?" is the very same person that is actually buying FLR. If we come down here, I leave you with a bit of a description about the word hypocrite. Hypocrite is a person who claims or pretends to have certain beliefs about what is right, but who behaves in a way that disagrees with those beliefs. I'm going to wrap up on this tweet here from Jungle Inc. posted on the 21st of January. Jungle announces that this is his final Fleur network post or discussion. He doesn't want to bash or argue about Fleur. He doesn't want to be associated with it either in any way. From this point going forward, he is done, and he's staying out of it and away. It's not for him, and he wishes everyone good luck. But the really intriguing thing is, if we come over here to Jungle's profile and we click on the tweets and replies, it shows you that he's even created content around Fleur, and in fact, this is all that he has talked about ever since posting that tweet, right? It's a real shame, and I'm not sure about the narrative that he's trying to portray. It is what it is, right? So, I don't know, it's all very suspicious to me, especially since that the only tweet that he has not replied to is the one from me asking him about what his concerns are. If you're watching this, Jungle, please let me know because I am genuinely curious. So that's pretty much the video, and I created it to forward it to people or refer people to it that have some concerns. You know, it takes me a long time to get to the root of people's problems and what their concerns actually are, and sometimes, after putting in a lot of effort, I never actually get an answer. It seems like after a little bit of digging, the concerns are with the fact that Bitrue facilitated deposits and trading of an IOU before the token distribution event actually occurred. In regards to F assets, it's obviously in development, and that's pretty much it. So with that said, I would like to thank you all so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I hope you have an incredible day. Don't let the FUD get you down. This is just growing pains of a beautiful network moving forward. I'm out.
Mission Control, we have liftoff.